Have you ever wondered why so many videos promise magical foods, secret herbs, or ancient recipes that supposedly allow someone to stay in bed for hours without getting tired? And have you noticed that despite millions of people searching for these solutions every year, many still struggle with confidence, performance anxiety, low desire, fatigue, or dissatisfaction in their intimate relationships? Here's what's really happening beneath the surface. Most people assume sexual stamina is simply about physical endurance. They believe there must be a special ingredient, a hidden formula, or a traditional remedy that instantly transforms performance. But the science tells a very different story. Human sexual wellness is not controlled by a single food, herb, or supplement. Instead, it emerges from the interaction between cardiovascular health, stress levels, emotional connection, sleep quality, relationship satisfaction, communication patterns, and psychological well-being. In other words, when people search for a 3-hour secret recipe, they are often trying to solve a much deeper issue: fear of inadequacy, anxiety about performance, loss of confidence, emotional disconnection, or misunderstanding what healthy intimacy actually looks like. And this matters far more than most people realize. Because difficulties with sexual confidence don't stay confined to the bedroom. They can influence self-esteem, increase stress, create tension between partners, reduce emotional closeness, and sometimes even affect overall relationship satisfaction. What the research shows is that sexual satisfaction is strongly connected to communication, emotional openness, trust, and relationship quality, not simply duration alone. In fact, recent longitudinal research continues to demonstrate that sexual concerns and relationship satisfaction influence one another over time, meaning that improving one area often improves the other as well. Let me explain this with a simple example. Imagine intimacy as a campfire. Most people focus entirely on making the flames bigger at the last moment. But experienced couples understand that the quality of the fire depends on everything that happened beforehand: gathering the wood, protecting the fire from rain, and continuously tending it. Relationships work in much the same way. Small daily moments of affection, emotional responsiveness, stress management, physical health habits, and open communication create the conditions for satisfying intimacy. Recent relationship research and sex therapy experts increasingly emphasize that emotional connection and intentional communication throughout the day are major predictors of intimacy satisfaction. So in today's video, we're going to separate myth from science. We'll explore why the idea of lasting longer is often misunderstood, what actually determines sexual stamina, how emotional connection influences desire and satisfaction, and the evidence-based lifestyle habits that support healthy, sustainable intimacy. And most importantly, you'll leave with practical tools you can begin using immediately. If this is helping you understand relationships differently, consider subscribing. I post evidence-based content like this every week to help you build healthier, happier, and more deeply connected relationships. Let's begin with perhaps the most important truth in this entire discussion. There is no single food, herb, or secret recipe that can reliably transform sexual stamina overnight. Here's what's really happening beneath the surface. Sexual energy is, first and foremost, a reflection of overall health. Think of the human body like a smartphone battery. If dozens of apps are running in the background, poor sleep, chronic stress, inactivity, unresolved relationship conflict, excessive alcohol use, anxiety, or underlying health conditions, even the most advanced phone drains quickly. Our bodies work in much the same way. Many people search for external solutions while ignoring the internal systems that generate energy in the first place. What the research shows is that cardiovascular health plays a central role in sexual wellness. Healthy blood flow, efficient oxygen delivery, and good heart health support energy, arousal, and physical endurance. In fact, experts frequently describe sexual function as an important indicator of overall cardiovascular health because both rely heavily on healthy blood vessels and circulation. Let me explain this with a simple example. Imagine trying to run a marathon after sleeping only 4 hours, eating poorly for weeks, and carrying high levels of stress. Most of us would immediately recognize that performance would suffer. Yet many people expect intimacy to somehow operate outside these same biological principles. It doesn't. Sleep, for example, is profoundly important. During sleep, the body regulates hormones involved in desire, energy, mood, and stress recovery. Research consistently shows that insufficient sleep is associated with lower sexual desire, poorer mood, increased irritability, and reduced relationship satisfaction. And stress may be even more important. When we experience chronic stress, the brain activates the body's threat detection system. Stress hormones such as cortisol increase, preparing us to survive danger, not to experience pleasure, connection, or intimacy. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes perfect sense. Thousands of years ago, if our ancestors were facing immediate danger, reproduction was not the brain's highest priority. Survival was. The problem is that modern stressors, financial worries, work pressure, social media overload, family responsibilities, and relationship conflict can keep this stress system activated for weeks, months, or even years. As a result, many people interpret reduced desire or lower energy as a personal failure, when it is actually a predictable biological response. When we understand the psychology and physiology behind this, everything starts to make sense. So what can you do? Start with what researchers sometimes call the foundation habits. First, prioritize 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep most nights. Second, engage in regular physical activity. Even brisk walking for 30 minutes a day can improve cardiovascular health, mood regulation, and stress resilience. Third, pay attention to alcohol intake. While alcohol may initially reduce inhibition, excessive use often reduces sexual functioning, energy, and emotional attunement. Fourth, schedule recovery time. Many people place work meetings, appointments, and responsibilities on their calendar, but never schedule rest. Try this simple exercise. At the end of each day, ask yourself 3 questions. How is my energy today? How stressed did I feel today? And did I do anything that supported my physical and emotional well-being? Track your answers for 2 weeks. Patterns will begin to emerge. You may discover that your energy is lowest after poor sleep, highest after exercise, or significantly affected by stress and relationship tension. Awareness creates choice, and choice creates change. If you're learning something valuable here, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss future videos. Every week, we explore evidence-based strategies that help you strengthen both your relationships and your overall well-being. Because before we talk about lasting longer, we must first understand a deeper truth. Healthy intimacy begins with a healthy body, a regulated nervous system, and a lifestyle that supports connection rather than constantly draining it. Now let's talk about something that rarely gets enough attention, despite the fact that it affects millions of people across all ages and relationship stages: performance anxiety. And here's the irony. The more someone worries about lasting longer, doing well, or not disappointing their partner, the more difficult intimacy often becomes. Here's what's really happening beneath the surface. Human sexuality is not simply a physical process. It is a brain process. In fact, the brain is often described by sex researchers as our most important sexual organ because it integrates emotions, memories, expectations, stress, relationship experiences, and physical sensations all at the same time. When someone becomes preoccupied with performance, the brain can shift from experiencing intimacy to evaluating it. Instead of being present, they begin monitoring themselves. Am I doing this right? Am I taking too long? Am I not lasting long enough? What if my partner is disappointed? This mental state is known in psychology as spectatoring, a term originally introduced by pioneering sex researchers Masters and Johnson. Rather than participating in the experience, the person essentially becomes an observer, constantly judging and analyzing themselves. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine trying to fall asleep while repeatedly asking yourself every 30 seconds, am I asleep yet? Why am I not asleep? What if I don't fall asleep tonight? For most people, sleep becomes more difficult. Intimacy often works in a similar way. The harder we force, monitor, or evaluate ourselves, the more stress we create. And stress changes biology. When the brain perceives pressure or threat, even emotional threat, it activates the sympathetic nervous system, often called the fight or flight response. Heart rate increases, muscles tense, attention narrows, stress hormones rise. Unfortunately, these same responses can interfere with relaxation, pleasure, and emotional connection. What the research shows is that anxiety is one of the strongest psychological predictors of sexual difficulties. Clinical studies consistently find that concerns about performance, fear of judgment, and negative self-evaluation can significantly reduce satisfaction and increase distress. Most people assume this is about attraction, but the real issue is often emotional safety and self-pressure. And this doesn't only affect new relationships. Long-term couples may also experience performance anxiety after stressful life events, health changes, parenting responsibilities, aging, or periods of emotional distance. So how do we interrupt this cycle? The first strategy is shifting from a performance mindset to a connection mindset. Instead of asking, how am I performing? Try asking, how connected do I feel right now? Am I present? What emotions am I experiencing? What would help both of us feel more relaxed and connected? That single shift changes the entire experience. Second, practice mindfulness. Research increasingly supports mindfulness-based interventions for improving sexual well-being and reducing anxiety. Because mindfulness trains attention to remain in the present moment rather than becoming trapped in worries or self-criticism. Here's a simple exercise. Before intimate moments, spend 2 minutes focusing only on your breathing. Inhale slowly for 4 seconds. Exhale slowly for 6 seconds. Notice physical sensations without judging them. When distracting thoughts appear, and they will, gently redirect attention back to your breath. This practice teaches the nervous system that it is safe to relax. Third, communicate openly. Many anxieties survive in silence. When partners honestly discuss fears, insecurities, expectations, and preferences, emotional pressure often decreases dramatically. When we understand the psychology behind performance anxiety, everything starts to make sense. The goal is not perfection. The goal is presence. Because satisfying intimacy rarely emerges from trying to impress someone. It grows from feeling emotionally safe enough to simply be with someone. Now let's explore something that surprises many people. Most people assume sexual satisfaction is primarily driven by physical attraction, but relationship science tells us a much richer story. Most people assume this is about attraction, but the real issue is often emotional connection. Here's what's really happening beneath the surface. Human beings are wired for attachment. From infancy onward, our brains learn whether relationships are safe, predictable, and emotionally responsive. These early experiences shape what psychologists call our attachment style, the patterns we bring into adult relationships regarding trust, closeness, vulnerability, and emotional security. When we understand the psychology behind this, everything starts to make sense. If someone consistently feels emotionally ignored, criticized, rejected, or disconnected in a relationship, their desire for intimacy may naturally decrease, not because love has disappeared, but because emotional safety has weakened. Think of emotional connection as the soil in a garden. Physical attraction may plant the seed, but emotional responsiveness, trust, appreciation, and secure attachment provide the nutrients that allow intimacy to continue growing over time. Without healthy soil, even strong attraction can struggle to survive. What the research shows is that couples who report higher levels of emotional intimacy, responsiveness, and relationship satisfaction also tend to report greater sexual satisfaction. Relationship researchers, including Dr. Sue Johnson and many attachment scholars, have repeatedly demonstrated that emotional accessibility and responsiveness are central predictors of long-term relationship well-being. Let me explain this with a simple example. Imagine two couples. In the first couple, partners regularly express appreciation, respond kindly during conflict, show curiosity about each other's inner world, and repair misunderstandings quickly. In the second couple, conversations are mostly logistical. Did you pay the bill? Who's picking up the children? Don't forget the appointment. Emotional conversations are rare. Affection is inconsistent. Conflict remains unresolved. Even if both couples initially experience strong attraction, which relationship is more likely to sustain closeness over years? For most people, the answer is obvious. Desire thrives in environments where people feel emotionally seen. This is why small moments matter so much. Relationship researcher Dr. John Gottman refers to these moments as bids for connection. Small attempts to seek attention, affection, support, or emotional engagement. A partner saying, "Look at this funny video." A sigh after a difficult day. A simple, "Can we talk for a minute?" These moments may appear insignificant, but over time, repeatedly responding to these bids builds trust and emotional security. Ignoring them repeatedly can slowly create distance. Here's a practical exercise you can begin tonight. For the next 7 days, spend just 15 minutes engaging in what researchers sometimes call a stress-reducing conversation. During this time, one partner speaks about their day. The other listens without fixing, correcting, or immediately offering advice. Instead, ask questions such as, "What was the hardest part? How did that make you feel? What do you need from me right now?" The goal is not problem solving. The goal is emotional understanding. Another powerful practice is daily appreciation. Each evening, tell your partner one specific thing you appreciated about them that day. Not a general statement like, "You're great." Be specific. "Thank you for checking in when you knew I was stressed. I appreciated how patient you were with the children." Specific appreciation strengthens emotional bonds because it communicates, "I notice you. You matter to me. If this conversation is helping you see intimacy from a new perspective, consider subscribing. Every week, we explore practical, science-backed tools for building stronger, healthier relationships. Because the real secret to lasting intimacy isn't found in a hidden recipe. It's found in thousands of small moments of emotional connection, repeated consistently over time. Let's now talk about a factor that relationship researchers have been emphasizing for decades, yet many couples still underestimate: communication. And not just communication in general, we're talking about the quality of communication. Because here's what's really happening beneath the surface. Many intimacy challenges are not actually intimacy problems. They're communication problems wearing a disguise. One partner may interpret a decrease in intimacy as rejection. The other may be overwhelmed by stress, exhaustion, or emotional disconnection. One partner may want more closeness. The other may need more emotional safety before feeling desire. But when these needs remain unspoken, both people often begin creating stories. He isn't attracted to me anymore. She must be disappointed in me. My partner doesn't care. I'm failing in this relationship. Over time, assumptions replace conversations, and assumptions are often inaccurate. What the research shows is that couples who communicate openly about emotional needs, relationship expectations, and intimacy generally report higher levels of relationship satisfaction and sexual satisfaction. Open communication reduces uncertainty, strengthens trust, and increases emotional closeness. Let me explain this with a simple whiteboard analogy. Imagine each partner living on opposite sides of a river. Communication is the bridge. Without the bridge, both people may still love each other deeply, but misunderstandings become increasingly likely. Eventually, each partner starts interpreting the other's behavior from a distance, and distance almost always distorts perception. This is especially important when discussing intimacy. Many people were never taught how to have healthy conversations about desire, affection, preferences, insecurities, or emotional needs. As a result, they either avoid these conversations entirely or discuss them only during conflict. Neither approach tends to work well. Instead, relationship experts often recommend having intentional, low-pressure conversations outside emotionally charged moments. For example, schedule a weekly 20-minute relationship check-in. During this conversation, each partner answers 4 simple questions. First, what felt good in our relationship this week? Second, did anything leave you feeling disconnected? Third, what support do you need in the coming week? And fourth, what is one thing we can do to strengthen our connection? Notice something important. These questions are collaborative. They're not about blame. They're about understanding. Another powerful communication tool comes from family therapy research, using I statements instead of accusations. Compare these 2 approaches. You never make time for me versus I've been feeling lonely lately and I'd really appreciate more intentional time together. The first statement often triggers defensiveness. The second invites dialogue. The goal is not to win an argument. The goal is to deepen understanding. Active listening is equally important. When your partner speaks, try reflecting back what you heard before responding. For example, what I'm hearing is that you've been feeling overwhelmed at work and disconnected recently. Did I understand that correctly? This simple technique dramatically reduces misunderstandings because it ensures that people feel heard before solutions are offered. When we understand the psychology behind communication, everything starts to make sense. People rarely become closer because they perfectly avoid conflict. They become closer because they learn how to navigate vulnerability, misunderstanding, and repair together. Strong relationships are not relationships without challenges. They are relationships in which both people repeatedly choose curiosity over criticism, understanding over assumptions, and connection over silence. Now we need to address perhaps the biggest misconception behind today's topic: the idea that lasting longer automatically leads to greater satisfaction. This belief is deeply embedded in popular culture. Movies, social media, advertising, and countless online claims often send the message that intimacy can be measured like a sporting event, that more time equals more success. But science paints a very different picture. Here's what's really happening beneath the surface. Human intimacy is not a competition. It's a shared emotional and physical experience. And when people begin measuring their worth primarily through duration, they often lose sight of the very qualities that make intimacy meaningful in the first place. What the research shows is that relationship satisfaction is influenced far more by factors such as emotional closeness, responsiveness, mutual pleasure, communication, affection, and feeling understood than by simply extending the amount of time spent in intimate activity. In fact, several studies examining long-term couples have found that satisfaction is strongly associated with relationship quality, emotional attunement, and partner responsiveness, rather than any specific time metric. Let me explain this with a simple example. Imagine going out to dinner with someone you deeply care about. Would a 5-hour dinner automatically be better than a 1-hour dinner? Not necessarily. A brief conversation characterized by warmth, attention, laughter, and genuine connection can feel profoundly satisfying. Meanwhile, a much longer interaction filled with distraction, anxiety, criticism, or emotional distance may leave both people feeling disconnected. Intimacy often works in exactly the same way. Quality matters more than quantity. Presence matters more than performance. Connection matters more than comparison. Unfortunately, many people compare themselves to unrealistic standards created by entertainment media, online myths, or exaggerated stories. This comparison process can be psychologically damaging. Social comparison theory tells us that people naturally evaluate themselves relative to others. But when the comparison standard is unrealistic, self-esteem often suffers. People may begin thinking, something must be wrong with me. I'm not enough. I'm failing. These beliefs frequently increase anxiety, which, as we discussed earlier, can interfere with intimacy itself. This creates a cycle. Anxiety leads to self-monitoring. Self-monitoring reduces presence. Reduced presence decreases satisfaction. It's about two people continually choosing to understand, support, and care for one another. If this video added value to your life, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to join a community dedicated to building healthier, happier, and more deeply connected relationships. Thank you for spending this time with me. And until next time, take good care of yourself and of the people you love.